So we aspire to equip people with the necessary tools and skills and understanding to become drivers of change within their communities. We're interested in big issues, and we hope that through practice and training, people seek out the full picture on issues that matter to them, feel more comfortable to talk about their opinions, and seek to understand others through active listening. We're also really interested in inclusivity, and we want to help get diverse groups together and bring people together in the spirit of dialogue. So today I'm going to be joined by 4 wonderful panelists and my co-host, who I said I was going to introduce to, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of who they are. So Scott Wilson, I'll start with. Right. Scott is the co-founder and CEO of Wilson AI, a specialist company that develops AI software for the finance, insurance, and retail and sporting sectors. Scott is an active member of the University of Newcastle's Vice-Chancellor's Generative Artificial Intelligence Task Force, advising the ethical integration of AI in education. Scott's a seasoned leader and entrepreneur and innovator in the field of AI, and Scott holds a Master's at the Business of University of Newcastle, a Master's of Business from the University of Newcastle, and is a graduate from the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Dr. Lucas Wiesman, am I pronouncing that correctly? Perfect, okay. He's a postdoctorate research fellow in physics at the University of Melbourne, and he is part of the innovation management at TMOS and a co-founder of Machine Learning Artificial Intelligence Australia. Lucas recently organised a hugely successful hackathon for AI that had over 200 participants, I understand. Sounds pretty amazing. I had a look at it online and it looked incredible. So many people working together. I think that we're going to ask some questions about that later. And Lucas has written about the potential and risks of artificial intelligence in education and research. Ruth Lewis. Hi. Ruth Lewis has a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering and a graduate diploma in Digital Communications, a Master of Strategic Foresight, and is registered with the National Engineering Register. Ruth is the Director of Technology Foresight Consulting. She's an experienced strategic IT consultant, academically qualified futurist, and professional engineer based in Melbourne. Ruth is the chair of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, the IEEE, is that correct? And she's the chair of the Society on Social Implications of Technology Standards Committee. And she's a contributor to many ethically aligned AI technical standards and was awarded the IEEE SA 2022 Standards Medallion for leadership in promoting the development of IEEE technology and society standards. Dr. Jacinth Flore is a historian of medicine and science and technology studies as a scholar at University of Melbourne. She's also an affiliate member of the Australian Research Council of Excellence for Automated Design Making and Society. Jazz combines medical humanities, science and technology studies, and critical theory to explore digital transformations in mental health. Her most recent book, The Artifacts of Digital Mental Health, examines how technologies are transforming understandings and experience in mental health and illness. And now Elaine Young, my co-host. Elaine's a committee member of Conversation at the Crossroads, just like me. And she comes from a startup background, and she studies statistics and machine learning and is now diving into AI governance. And she's a passionate advocate for artificial intelligence and has worked in the AI industry. And I welcome her to do the QA part of facilitation for tonight. So over to you, Elaine. Thanks so much.
Such a great turnout. Shall we warm up a little bit? Okay. Okay, let's do a poll. So hands up if we have Virgil or use the following AI products. Okay, let's give John and ChatGPT. Ready, everybody? OpenAI, machine learning, Sora, Midjourney, and Zero Shot, prompt engineering,
It's getting so.
engineering, Sam Whitman, Jensen Huang, Elaine Yong. We got the last one here. So far, so I know this kind of question from full perspective, perspective to you. So for the rest of the audience, so you are not in a round. This isn't a technology channel. So it's more about the social impact technology. So we will going to have some glossary list of the most essential terms you can refer to. So yeah, let's get started. So, dear panelists, let's get started. So, dear panelists, we want to get to know about you. So, could you please tell us a little bit how's your involvement, your personal involvement with AI technology, and so yeah, we can get started. Okay. So, yes, around it. So I decided to tackle that as my question. Yeah. So this is a historical building actually. So the tech could be an issue. So everybody could bear with us a little bit. Yeah. If people are talking without microphone, can everybody hear from the back? Yeah, that's all. Sorry about that. Yeah,
all right. So anyway, I was doing this subject called 21st century challenges, and I decided to look into AI. And one of the things that I could see is that there was quite a lot of research going on around the world, and a fair bit of funding, including I think from Elon Musk and other funding bodies. But however, in terms of practical applications of how to actually solve some of these issues, I came across some amazing work being done by the IEEE, who Susan has mentioned, who is the largest professional organisation in the world, body. And they had actually just released their first version of what was called ethically aligned design. And that is really spoke to me as an engineer. I thought, wow, nobody's actually thought about embedding ethics into design.
And I, sorry, I could, no, it's not working. And I could see that from a practical point of view, that made sense to me, that you could probably just
Design for ethics, for sustainability, right from the very beginning of thinking about how you actually develop an
an
AI and an
ML, a machine learning system.
So I actually came on board with their very first standard and never really looked back. And now I've wound up with a standards committee of 19 standards working groups in everything from, you know, data use in AI to and information, things like data provenance, through to what I call applied AI, including things like metaverse and so on. But no,
Not working.
it's not working. Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like.
No, everybody on at the back here.
No, no.
No, and not online either. This microphone, sorry, we should never hire a team. La 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 la. La la la.
Could you hear me at the back, okay?
No, it's very much.
Testing. And my camera's online. I might just.
You just speak to the microphone.
No, it's dropping straight out.
Yeah, it does, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's picking up the audio from the laptop just in front, but that's not picking anyone in here, is it? Testing. Not sure what's going on. No, it's very.
Maybe if you turn one on, maybe there's a connection issue when you have several ones on at the same time.
Yeah, this is off also. Can we try that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just keep it close to the mouth, okay, so.
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing. For the like two different microphone systems, this is independent and that connects to these speakers up here and both are coming through two different systems. Testing.
I don't just try to project.
This is battery on the
Yeah. I think we'll just try and project, can you hear me?
I'll just, yes, okay, so I'll just
No, just to summarize, so essentially.
groups all developing different aspects of data use and AI and applied AI in really interesting areas like the metaverse and AR and VR and data provenance and, you know, human representation of data and data subjects, humans within AI, and very much around what we call ethically aligned design, putting ethics and human values and sustainability right in the middle of design and standards. And these standards are the ones that are published, are available for free download and use to guide people on to actually start thinking about ethics and environmental sustainability issues from the very beginning when you're starting to think about what you want to develop or what you want to purchase, if you're talking about an acquisition or how you want to integrate. And also now a certification program as well to certify products and services as trustworthy AI. So that's a short version.
Yeah, so is there any website that people can look into?
Yes, I think I've given Susan.
Okay, yeah, so we will have the website available for you at the end of the slides. So we go to Jazz.
You can try.
Okay, quickly. I'm Chaz. Thanks everyone. Thanks also to the organisers for all the backstage work and all of us. I know this is a bit inconvenient, but I do want to say the research review really wants to say that this is a great technology can foil this plans. I would say I'm a historian and a sociologist. A lot of my work concerns the history of developments in technology in relation to mental health in particular. I've written a book that was published late last year called The Consequences of Digital Mental Health, where I looked at 3 specific technologies, apps, wearable devices, and ingesting services, and how they have transformed how we think about and how we experience emotions and mental health. This has led me to do a bit of work on emotional AI, which is now the sort of area in which I focus the most. I'm very interested in what to say the social implications of those technologies rather than the sort of ethical framework of them. And I teach 2 subjects in history and philosophy of time and another week that focus on technology and sort of 20th century AI. In connection to AI, I think I would also add that I'm more than interested in the stories we tell about AI, because a lot of what I'm going to make is like ChatGPT work narrative. Stories, very, very specific words, and so to do the question. So my thinking is, well, what are those stories? What are the laws that are being put into those programs? And unfortunately, in terms of these laws and training, there is probably to talk about it on the back. So yeah, looking forward.
I think we just, sorry, can we abandon the microphone?
When you use the microphones, we obviously are having trouble when you start.
All right, projecting is fine. So yeah, Scott Wilson, I set up Wilson AI, founded the company 6 years ago. Before that, I was the CEO and Managing Director of iSelect. And Yuval, who's our Chief Data Scientist, who's here tonight, was the head of data science with us at iSelect. We built, or the business back then built the very first recommendation engine in the year 2000. In about 2012, we started working in deep learning. And I came from a career of retail and consumer goods. So I'd worked across entertainment industries, where we often ran demand planning. We would do large customer segmentation. We had all the information from supermarkets and analyze that. And when I got to iSelect, I was like, oh my God, there's this thing called machine learning. All the stuff we've been doing manually, we can now join lots of different data sets and start to get outcomes. So I guess what I saw was the outcome and applying machine learning and AI into a business. So when I joined in 2012, we had 410 staff. There was 12 machine learning models at the time. And when I left, we built a system. So we deployed the different models across the organization. And I guess often the conversation comes around the bots are coming to take our jobs. The AI is going to reduce the workforce. And I guess the businesses that I've been in are an example of where that doesn't have to be the future. We grew to over 1,000 people in 7 countries. And I guess the unique skill I have is being able to talk between business executives and data scientists, because I find that the C-suite, the leaders and the board have a certain language of how they're talking about the business, and they have certain problems. And a data scientist often has the answer. And so we in that time increased our headcount, so employed more people, but the only way I could do that is to improve our productivity. So we cut our cost of doing business we had 800 call center staff that were doing sales, mortgage broking and health insurance. But what we did is made them more efficient. So we helped them do their job more efficiently. And now we get echo. And we brought the cost of doing business down from 32% to 17%. And I guess a lot of the conversation we have now with executives around how can you apply AI and machine learning in your process? And how is it a force multiplier? So how does it take, grow revenue, cut costs, increase productivity, improve profit? Because in our traditional processes, anywhere up to 40% plus is wasted. is rework, it's boring, repetitive. And so if we can apply these tools to cut out the work that isn't adding value, it doesn't matter the organization, that's where I see the benefit.
Okay, I'm going without microphone as well. Hello, everyone. I'm a physicist at Melbourne Uni. I work in nanotechnology, and yeah, we focus on really small things. We try to engineer systems that miniaturize optical imaging systems like microscopes, and try to build them potentially one day into smartphone cameras so that you can do medical exams with mobile devices on the go. And a lot of the work we do involves machine learning algorithms to analyze data or to design new nanostructures, actually. And yeah, that is my initial contact with the whole AI machine learning world. And then I guess everybody's aware, beginning of 2023, ChatGPT was everywhere, and I was really fascinated how that would affect the way that universities and academics work. Yeah, I decided to join the conversation, contributed to some articles and gave some talks on the topic. And in that process, I met quite a few like-minded people, not just in the university, but also from the startup sector. And we decided to start a non-profit organization here in Australia to bring together the AI builder and entrepreneurial community that's called MLAI Oz. And what we did is we organized larger hackathons. Actually, in the beginning, we thought it would be quite small. We thought it would be a few pizzas and a couple of people. And then we had this huge inflow of people. And yeah, actually, Wilson AI was one of the sponsors of our first event. Yeah, it was a huge success. So we continued that, and the organization grew, and we're organizing another hackathon now. And I'm really excited for the next year.
Yeah, the next hackathon will be next month. So if you are interested, you can, go back to Lucas after this session, and you will find out the date and venue, etc. So amazing. Thank you all. And we think that we have very balanced panelists tonight. So we are very glad to have you. So we go to the next question. What are the ways that AI is transforming the way we work? So we can start sharing how AI is transforming your own work. And then I would also love you to share your broader observation. For example, Scott, so you help your clients adapting to AI. From those days, you started Wilson AI, which is like 4 years before ChatGPT, right, to current days.
Yep.
So what are the main trends of AI transforming in businesses? Has the transformation been accelerated by this new wave of generative AI? Yeah, could you please?
Yeah, yes, it has. I think if I go back, even so we've got a client at the moment. Yuval and I were in Sydney in March this year doing a review. We did basically like a 3 to 5 year AI roadmap for that client. They're in the rehab management space. So when a worker is injured at in the workplace, they have allied healthcare professionals that manage that case back to successful return to work. They're probably about 25% of all return to work cases in the country. They employ 300 allied healthcare workers, and the matching of the skills is all done manually, or was all done manually. And when we did the review of the roadmap, and we deployed a triage tool. So it takes medical certificates, insurance information, type of injury, occupation, etc., and then basically looks and risks assess. So it does a triage to say, okay, which one of our 300 allied healthcare workers should that case be matched to? Who's better matched to handle that case back to the workforce successfully? 3 years ago, and pre-ChatGPT, a lot of the things that now we're talking about being able to do in a number of weeks, we plan to build custom in like 6 months, 12 months timeframe. So that it's done two things. All of a sudden, AI is touchable. So people can use it at home. They can be in the workforce. They can ask a question. It can give an answer. And we're starting to see business leaders go, oh, is that what AI can do? And I wouldn't underestimate the power of that and that curiosity. because they're the ones that hold the purse strings to then do the funding. So being able to go, oh, I don't actually understand the science behind it. I don't understand the code base. I don't understand what I need, but could you do this? And often the language is, I want to predict that, or I want to cut that cost, or I want to remove that boring, repetitive, or dangerous piece of work. And so what we're seeing is it's opening up executives' minds to, I now need to do this. I've moved from it being a conversation that was happening behind closed doors to, shit, we need to hurry up. And there is a real, the dialogue's moving. Companies there'll be the haves and haves not. And I think that's the risk I think a lot of business leaders are realizing. But even in our sphere, being able to do stuff that, 12 months, 2 years ago would have been a project. We go, yeah, we could probably get that done in about 6 weeks and cut the costs by 10.
It's an amazing industry user case, right? So, and Ruth, as a technology strategist for a very long period, have you experienced various stages of AI transformation? And is this time different? The new wave of generative AI, and how?
Yes, and can I just reflect on what Scott was saying? And I think that's fabulous. I really love your use case, actually. I think still currently the conversation, as you were saying, is around efficiency, cutting costs, which is really important, and that gets people's attention. But I want to say that the conversation now should be and should shift to outcomes, including efficiency, but also including well-being, and actually looking at measuring well-being for all stakeholders. Obviously important for the company, but there's also, I mean, you just mentioned health outcomes and rehabilitation. So you would want to, I would think, actually measure well-being outcomes for those being, so having specifically well-being metrics and things like that. So that's really, really important. Whilst the cost benefits are no doubt there, we want to actually promote well-being. And when I say well-being, I mean things like sustainable outcomes. It includes things like education or settlements or all sorts. There's actually, in the standards, there are actually 12 domains of well-being. So I'd like to see, and there is more shifting that conversation around outcomes that are much wider than just financial efficiency benefits, which is still important, but a wider conversation.
I think if you can combine them, that's where you get traction.
Absolutely.
That example, that chatbot, we ran control groups versus control groups we used it, triage tool versus ones that didn't. And they saved 10% costs, but workers went back to work 7 weeks quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's pretty cool when you can go, all right, the company's getting a win or the insurer's getting a win, but actually the employee is back at work.
Yeah.
And that's the objective of what we're trying to do, to your point around outcomes.
Exactly. So that's really,
That's a very.
Sorry, you're going to have to speak up.
A lot more speaking up. This way.
Sorry. We get that.
We can't give you a rule.
And also, if anyone wants to come forward, there are tens of seats at the front for anyone that can't hear, please.
sorry, we were just talking about well-being outcomes associated with AI in addition to efficiency. And so Scott and I were just talking about that. Helping patients back to work in rehabilitation situations.
So do you want to add some more points from the
Okay. So I also think I've just observed there seems to be a lot of marketing around AI, which does concern me. A lot of, say, when I say ERP systems, the larger corporate systems seem to be embedding AI, or even, the Microsoft suite. It's all, Copilot. It seems to be a lot of pressure from vendors to use these systems, and that concerns me. And I do feel like the market, as you were saying, Scott, is somewhat immature. It's almost like pressure to use this, but people are very frightened. I mean, surveys done last year by the University of Queensland
showed that only 23% of Australians are willing to accept AI. And particularly, I'm talking particularly AI decision making, I think, or recommender systems, decision making in things like the courts or in medical situations. So there's a lot of fear. And there's, I think, a friction there. So they're trying to see what the benefits are. I mean, even my own physiotherapist was telling me she's getting bombarded with emails from a service provider telling her if she doesn't use AI generated SEO, she's going to miss out on clients. So, you know, I feel like we need to kind of do this wisely, but maybe hold back the pressure a little bit. I don't know what you guys think, but
It's very helpful for us to have this critical thinking. So thank you for bringing this perspective to us, to our audience. So we've mentioned the well-being. So Jazz, this is your special interest as well. So you have tackled deep into the impact of the technology on mental health, especially, right? So could you please tell us a bit more? So what are the interest findings of the technology impacting our mental health?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I will try to project. I will take inspiration from my colleague Christian, who I think does this very well. Look, it's a complicated question, and it is tangentially connected to work, but also not really. So I don't want to veer too much away from the question. One of the things I will say, though, is that when I say that I write about digital mental health, my approach to it is very critical. So I don't take, for instance, whatever diagnosis example we can think of at face value. I will analyze how the diagnosis itself is being framed and transformed by the technology. So my answer will not be that it's making things better or making things worse, but I will say that it's changing how we understand what mental health and mental illness is. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in my book is how, so one of the, popular understanding of mental health, it is something to do with the mind. That is very common. That is something that people talk about. It's usually what we talk about when we talk about our own experience of mental health. My mind is not too well, that sort of thing. But apps that are freely available, they might have ads and you might have to pay for an ad-free app, are already presenting mental health as something quite different. It is not limited to the mind anymore. It is to do not only with your vital signs, how much have you rested today, what is your heart rate, that sort of thing, but it's also connected to things like tracking your socialization. How many people have you spoken with today? What did you feel like when you spoke to these people? And again, my work does not view this as a good thing or a bad thing. It's more about pointing out that some of the frames of references that we have about mental health are already changing because of technology. And it's not so much that technology is, creating it on its own. It's more that it's actually something that the user does with the technology as well. It's not, I don't want people to get the impression that sort of, technology is imposing an understanding of mental health on us, and that's a bad thing. It's really not that. People are incredibly adept at appropriating these technologies and producing meanings of mental health and mental illness that suit their own life. And this is one of the really unique things about AI, is that it's creating a way for people to have a really personalized experience that they might share, but a lot of people I spoke to do not share the sort of updates that they get on their apps on social media. They don't. It's something that they use very, very personally.
I read in your book, there's this very interesting user case. So the teenagers, especially during the COVID, they start to use chatbot to ask questions about their mental health problems, because their feedback is very interesting. They say that the chatbot isn't judgmental. Yeah, that's why they're using it. Yeah. Right. So it's very interesting case study. So yeah, I would encourage people to read Jazz's book.
Thank you.
So now we come to Lucas. So as the co-founder of AI Hackathon in Melbourne, could you please share how generative AI is transforming the way entrepreneurs are starting up their projects nowadays?
Yeah, sure. So just for anybody who doesn't maybe know, hackathon is basically a short time frame where you get a group of people together and they get a challenge, and then they build a prototype and potentially test it. And then if it's successful and they have the time, they often start startups out of this. And we organized a big hackathon last year around the topic of AI, and the challenge there was to come up with a solution to an Australian problem. So it was quite open. And it's a really interesting moment in time now, because AI and machine learning used to be powerful, but it has become incredibly powerful over the last years, and it has also become incredibly accessible. So there are all these new use cases that you can use AI technology for, to work with natural language, for example. That's what ChatGPT and large language models were all about last year. And then we've seen image generation models. We've seen now more recently video generation models. And with each of these models is an endless amount of business opportunities for startups. And it's not just accessible to really big corporations anymore. Out of sudden, we can have a small team, maybe three machine learning engineers, and they can build something incredible. And I think that's really the premise behind the organization at the moment. It is also a very difficult time to start a startup because the technology moves so quick. Every time OpenAI releases an update, so OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT, there are startups that die that day, because that was their business case and that was the technology, and now it's freely accessible or for a very small price. So from that perspective, I think it's actually it's a very interesting time, but it's also very challenging because everything moves so quickly.
Yeah, I think all of us are feeling the same way. So the technology is evolving very quickly. So we are faced with new AI tools every day. So I think we are all overwhelmed. That's why it's so important to have this conversation with different perspectives and how we go about this new technology. So let's look into the field. So you have something to add?
I think there's never been a better time to do a startup.
Yeah.
You literally can have the power of the world, the knowledge of the world at your fingertips. And I think that I agree with you. Some of the use cases we're seeing with startups where they solve, it's a PDF reader, right? So they've gone a small piece of the puzzle. They're not far enough up the value chain. So their idea was never going to be sustainable, because once the large companies come and solve it, gone. I've got 4 startups on the go at the moment, 2 companies that we're running across 3 countries. One we're about to launch in a month, one we're starting, we're launching in about 4 months. It has never been easier to do a startup and scale, because you can do stuff that you used to have teams of people. You used to have lawyers and operations people and experts in this. You can find out the world's information at your fingertips. I think you have to ask the right questions and know how to ask the right questions. But yeah, I think I agree. There's this tension of, if your idea isn't sustainable or scalable, then you'll be out of business really quickly. If it is, and you're adding value, the machine learning can add an enormous amount of value to your organization.
So here's the question. So if any team can do things so quickly, how do they build their moat? So how do you prevent others, copy your ideas? And it's the same, right? They can do things also as quickly as you can do. So how can you do that?
I think that problem's always been there. So, if you look at Apple, they weren't the first to do the iPod. Sony was. They were better at scaling it. And there's always been that old saying, you never want to be the first mouse. The first mouse is going for the cheese and gets the mouse pack filled with. The second mouse gets a meal. So leveraging off these things and taking them, and a business in this day and age, like if I go back to ISO, we had 140 different technology systems that we put together, excluding the machine learning. This is technology systems to run that organization. So modern companies are very, very complex. They're made up of lots and lots of systems and processes. And therefore, there will be lots of opportunities, lots of, whether that's machine learning, deploying that across lots of different parts of the organization. So I don't think they're ever, if your business is an app in a single area, not much of a moat. If it's integrated and solving problems, generally the problems that sustain are complex. And there's value in moving and moving quick. So yeah, I think the way we talk to clients is there stuff you can reuse? Or then should you buy, build, or rent? You know, because if AWS has got a recommendation engine, you know, I had 9 CRM systems that I selected that held information on 11 million customers, all of them custom built. I got rid of all of them. We rented Salesforce because there was no value add in that particular technology. There's a lot of value add in our data science and our own proprietary technology. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to rent Mark Benioff's here. We're going to have our team build data science, the algorithms over here. So you've got to make a decision, am I renting, buying, building? And then you put that together in a unique way, using unique data, unique solutions, and that can build a moat.
Great. Thank you for the perspective. I really like that. So we are running short of time, so I better move to the next question. So we really want to look into the future, how this technology is going to, change us. So the question would be, let's put the pessimistic on first. So we are looking into the most pressing ethical concerns around AI first. So what do we need to do to ensure that these ethical concerns are addressed? Yeah, from the experts. Yeah, shall we start with it?
That's of interest.
Yes, correct.
Pessimistic. I think taking a pessimistic approach, I think, is this, and futurists do think in terms of scenarios, or what we might call archetype scenarios. So perhaps not the most pessimistic, but one of the most pessimistic would be doing exactly what we're doing now, but more of the same, faster, more efficient, but only pursuing dollar outcomes, which is what worries me, to be honest. Because whatever problems we've got now are going to be exacerbated exponentially. And at some point, we are going to run out of resources, being water, air, pollution, and the planet has only got limited resources to support. And we know that AI is incredibly resource hungry. So
a lot of compute power.
Yes. So that is kind of you talked about worst case scenario. Potentially, there could be a collapse. We could be bringing ourselves closer to the cliff of exhausting our planet. So the alternative, to my mind, is actually building our systems around shared human values, which are based on our ethics, of actually putting, doing it through a standard, perhaps I would call it standards outlook, or a standard way of doing it, which is both ethical and sustainable. And that's why I do what I do.
So can you give us an example of this ethical framework, for example, to tackle the issue, tackle the ethical concerns? Just one example.
One example. Yeah. Okay, so can I bring one up that the judge just mentioned? You were talking about psychological helpers. I think everyone's perhaps aware of things like companion chatbots and things like that, which is all psychological helpers. So we actually have a standard now, which is about to be released, to guide developers or users of what we call emulated empathy, systems that are pretending to be human, so that, because at the moment there's no standards. And this is why you write about this, because it is concerning, because it is ungoverned, because any startup can create a companion chatbot and there's a lot of psychological helper apps out there which may help, or they may cause a lot of difficulties. People have been known to suicide, and it caused enormous amount of stress by these apps telling them to go and kill themselves. Dare I say, it's true, isn't it? So,
do you want to add something to this?
Yeah. So we've got a standard for that.
Thank you.
I think it's really important to have standards for those kinds of things, obviously. I have spoken to a few sort of, young adults who use those kinds of mental health, emotion chatbots, and the experiences really vary. And it's very interesting to me because on the one hand, there is a lot of worry about it, about people seeking empathy from robots. On the other hand, I have spoken to people who want more empathy from robots, and they're very comfortable with that as well. And I think we need ways to be able to address how we are forming connections with those types of programs as well. But one of the things that concerns me the most when I've spoken to anyone who uses that are the reasons why. The reasons why is because seeking help from a human is very expensive. Some of the people I spoke to during COVID were international students. It was incredibly hard for them, and they might have had to go back home. And, I don't need to tell anyone here that mental illness is incredibly stigmatized, whether you're experiencing something very mild or something very severe. There is a scale of stigmatization that runs through our societies. I guess I have a dual interest in this. On the one hand, I'm very interested in how people are forming relations with humans and how ideas of empathy and connections are being remade through robots. But what concerns me the most is the problem that those chatbots are supposedly trying to solve, which is access. And access is the issue. It's very difficult to have psychological help if you don't have very good private health insurance, for example.
Yeah.
So it's more fundamental.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've touched some fundamental points of this issue, so which is the access of health systems, right? So yeah, very interesting. So, and Lucas, so you work in academia. What are your observations that the ethical concerns of our education system towards this AI technology?
Yes, so I think the education system will see a lot of changes over the next years because just mentioned, mental health can be really expensive. Education can be really expensive too, or is really expensive. And there are a lot of services in education, like one-on-one tutoring, that are simply unaffordable for a lot of people. So I think a lot of AI models will fill those gaps and will give more people access to that. It will also help to bridge language barriers. There are a lot of international students here in Australia that might be really smart, but if their English is not good enough, they might not be able to finish their degree. So I think we'll see a lot of models there at a university level, at a school level too. So Australia is very progressive on that. The education ministers have embraced it. And I think that's a huge opportunity, but there's also a huge risk. If you imagine you have one bad teacher, that teacher teaches a class of 20 students. Now, if you have a biased AI or an AI that once in a while produces harmful content, and that is rolled out to thousands or potentially millions of students, that has a gigantic, potentially gigantic impact. And I think that's where we need to be really careful, especially when we deploy these models in an education
So
setting.
regarding that, we still don't have standards to govern that concern, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing these emerging now. There's, in the US, there was the executive order. We have the EU AI Act now that took quite a while, and I expect probably in Australia that will be somewhat aligned with the regulation we're seeing in the EU now, where AI systems are categorized into risk or the potential damage they could do, and then dealt with accordingly. And education is usually ranked in the highest risk tier in the regulation systems.
And Scott, you also give advice in how the education system go about this AI ethically. So could you please give us some insights from your side?
Yeah, so I sit on the Vice Chancellor of Newcastle Uni.
Yep.
Has put together an advisory board made up of all the department heads, himself, and I'm an expert external advisor. And it's interesting because on the negative side, we could amplify bias. The challenge is the bias is already there in the human. And a lot of the data, what we're doing is putting a big magnifying glass over it. But to the counter argument, access, affordability, whether, and Newcastle Uni is one of the highest ranked on Indigenous education. So they do a lot of work. How do we give access to communities that traditionally wouldn't get access to education? And like I touched before, we have the world's knowledge at our fingertips. And so they're working through, first of all, how do they educate their staff? How do they get their staff AI ready? Because ultimately, you're going through and you're having these students go through a degree to get ready for the workforce. And business has this pent-up demand now. So we've moved very quickly to, we're looking for people that are capable and comfortable in an AI-enabled world. But I'd probably argue the university sector yet is not. And when I look at it and they're struggling with internally, how are we using it? Or if they're asking how are they using it, how are they teaching it? And that's an interesting dilemma when you say, I've got some academics that, you know, we've been using plagiarism tools. And the question is, well, do we ban the use of LLMs in preparation? Or if I'm doing my PhD, could it help me do all of my research in a, way faster time? Can I do maths with an abacus? Sure. Is it more efficient if I use a calculator? Yes. So they can be a tool, but they can be a threat. We have to understand the application of them. I think it'll, the conversations we're having is going to force the university to think about how are we accrediting? How are we testing? How are we preparing? They're looking to bring in next year a course for all students where it's compulsory. You have to do a course to be AI, like an AI education course to skill you up as part of your university course. So they're leaning into it. I'm not sure what the right answer is and the wrong answer. I think the reality is, it's here. I would argue Australia's behind the curve to the rest of the world. So we've got to get used to it. And, and when we talk to clients, we say, look, you can always mount a case for the negative. You can always go to the most pessimistic situation. And you should be cognizant of it. You should be aware of it. But if you're starting from a position that humans are biased, we bring our bias into everything we do, and it gets reflected back. I think there's a lot more work being done now, and you reference like the executive order that Biden did. They're forcing these companies to do red hat teams. They're forcing them to check around bias and put controls. A few years ago, Microsoft released a chatbot and it went rogue, and it went rogue really quickly. We're not seeing the same thing happen now. So we're seeing these bots have controls and measures around them. Can you hack them? Sure. If you're really driven to do it, can you get there? Yes. Are nefarious actors using it already? Yes. Like any technology in history, we move from a knife to a gun. There's ethical considerations around that. What happens in warfare when we have a technological shift? What we're talking about is there's a massive technological shift and we are not ready. And that, there's an opportunity for us to catch up.
So I think you've touched the point that for us to move from pessimistic side of it to look at the technology to the positive side of it. So yeah, let's jump to our last question, which give us our audience a little bit hope about future, right? So what do you see as the most promising potential benefits of AI, and what would we need to do collectively to make this a reality? So we can start with Ruth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the potential benefits of AI are massive, and we've been talking about some of them now, solving some of the world's most endemic and pressing problems like, global food crisis and the pandemic. It was already used, wasn't it? It's extraordinary how quickly the vaccines were produced. Affordable healthcare, climate change, and the plastic tide, generating efficient energy, microgrids, particularly in rural and developing countries, but also small-scale startups. And Scott's just been talking about how fabulous they can solve Australian or international issues, small and large scale. I'm very, very positive about that. But as you were saying, though, Lucas, we've got, and you talked about regulation. I just want to mention that regulation is always a little bit clumsy, and it does the fine-grained stuff. It's got a point of standards. It's actually getting people to know about these standards, to use them, and to start thinking about these ethical and sustainable considerations right from the get-go. That's where we're going to see the beautiful benefits for everyone, not just for the large Microsoft or OpenAI or whatever, but for everybody. We want to see the benefits distributed to the population and to the planet. And this is a fabulous opportunity for us to be a global community and to put in and to do it the right way, and then to all benefit. So that's my optimistic view. Yeah.
Awesome. And Jazz, so we know that you are very objective in your research and study. So from your perspective, so what are the most promising benefits of this technology?
I am really the wrong person to answer this question. And part of the reason for that is that I teach a subject called technology and contemporary life, and one of our key concepts is technological solutionism, which is the idea that technology can resolve complex social and economic issues. And we go through the subject looking at different issues. And while certainly AI might help with some things, there are a lot of these issues that they just do not need a technology. And I think that, for instance, taking a very recent example, one of the reasons why people might have serious doubts about AI is that the memories of robo-debt are very, very, present in our minds. And so talking about, let's say, climate change, because I thought about this question a lot, and the only thing I could come up with is sort of large-scale modeling of climate change. And I feel like, yes, this is an area where AI can really be helpful. But one of the things that I teach my students is that, sure, it will be helpful to give us the information, but what will change corporations from polluting us, or our own consumer practices? Political action, not AI. AI might amplify things for us, might help get, messages out there and increase awareness, sure. But a lot of what is needed is very sort of, corporations deciding to change their practices. We deciding not to consume certain products that, let's say, Apple makes because they're not recyclable. That's my answer. I'm afraid it's not very positive, but that is the problem with trying to teach critical thinking. And we have very about critical thinking.
So maybe Scott and Lucas, you are the right people to answer this question, right? So the promising AI use cases in the future.
I'll just add to Jazz's point. Whenever we start a project with a client, we actually talk about a framework. You start with people. Every executive in every business starts with the technology side. So the framework goes people, process, data, technology. So there's no point in applying an AI solution to something that could just be a conversation. And I think we often too readily jump to a silver bullet. And I talk about it in the concept of when I was client side, it used to drive me nuts. I'd have these tech vendors come in, and our software platform, it's a silver bullet, it's going to solve everything. It's going to be amazing. Bullshit. It's not. They get you some benefit. They've sprinkled some AI over the top. What they don't think about is the organization and all the arms and limbs and where it goes and the processes. So and AI still, because we're in still narrow AI, so an algorithm is doing a job in a particular part of a process, and you may need to put 40 or 400 together to AI enable a system, the organization. So I think starting with people and thinking about people first is the most critical bit in when you're applying AI. I don't know, that sounds odd because everyone starts the other side. But where organizations fail, and I think it was McKinsey research had 60% of AI projects fail to get scale up. They don't move beyond pilot. It's because they start with a really cool solution looking for a problem.
Yep.
Or they try something, and what they don't do is understand what's the process in the business, what's the sub steps that go on, and what do I have to do, and do I have the data, and where's the systems joined up, and how does that data flow? They go, quick, I need AI to solve that, because we have this view that I talk to Siri or I talk to ChatGPT now, and it gives me what I think is a broad answer. It's a language model. It's a narrow task. But my interpretation is broad because it answers me on all these topics, so therefore it must know. The reality is it doesn't. So for us, thinking still narrow, and I look at it and go, I'm actually really optimistic, because if you go back over the last 500 years, every technological transformation has moved humanity massively forward. And I think AI can solve climate change. We're really bad at recognizing long-term patterns. We had a pandemic in the early 1900s. We had wars. You know, we repeat the same behaviors. We don't look at long-term patterns. We're really bad over predicting the short term and under predicting the long term. So taking the ability to look at large data sets and use machine learning for good and benefit humanity, and help people access healthcare, improve workforce, get productivity, get rid of waste. I mean, put me out of a job. I've got other things I can do. And I think it's challenging because this is the first time, you know, if you're a university student and you're saying, and I got a son at RMIT, well, is the thing I'm studying now, is that what I'm going to do throughout my career? Probably not. I've been in 5, 6 different industries. I've got a learning orientation. I need to learn, and I need to be a lifelong learner, because that's how you're going to keep staying ahead of it. Because it doesn't matter the technology, the adoption curve is exponentially increasing. And we sort of have to get comfortable with that. So, but I think the net at the moment, my view is still very strongly in it's going to be a massive net positive. And if you embrace it, you get comfortable with it, and the more you use it. So if you haven't used it every day, get comfortable, use it, try it, ask it a question. You know, use ChatGPT, create a shopping list, or take a photo of the things in your fridge that you've got and say, come up with a meal solution for tonight, a recipe for tonight. Just get comfortable using it. The more you do that, the more you'll find ways to use it.
Yeah. Thank you for the encouragement for everybody to use the technology, get comfortable and adaptive to the new technology. And I echo with you. So I remember Sam Altman said a lot of startups fall in love with technology instead of falling in love with the problem there's.
Yeah.
So this is for everybody. So whether you work or whether you do the startup, whether you study, so fall in love with the problems you are solving. So that's it. That is very good. So we last but not least, Lucas, do you have anything to add to this one?
Yeah, so I'll answer this one as a researcher, scientist again. And I think for me, the area where I'm most optimistic is accelerating scientific progress with AI, and that goes well beyond chatbots or language models. So it's important to acknowledge that scientific tools have been part of scientific research for years. AI tools have been part of scientific research for years, but we've really seen incredible progress over the last years, all the way from the use in particle physics to drug discovery to material research, and touching on something that Ruth and Jess mentioned earlier, climate change, for example. I believe a lot of that will depend on us making breakthroughs in science. And for example, coming up with new materials for batteries, for example, that are more sustainable. There's an interesting case by Microsoft. Now, the traditional way of doing materials research is incredibly tedious. You have to come up with candidate materials, and then you go through a lot of iterations of trying them out in the lab. A lot of trial and error can take years. And what they demonstrated was they had an AI system that started with over 30 million candidate materials and then filtered it down to a couple of hundred, and then with another process to just a handful that were then actually tested in the lab. And they found a material that ticked all the boxes, and that is now actually being tested to be used in batteries. And I think there are many of these kind of things, for example, in drug discovery. We've seen incredible investments of, the order of hundreds of millions of dollars of pharmaceutical companies into AI drug discovery over the last 2 years. And there will be a reason for it, because they know that is the way forward. And yeah, I'm very optimistic on that, because I think every time we make scientific progress, the world gets better in some way.
Yes, so shall we give a round of applause to our panelists? Wonderful and balanced discussion, but I hope that the conversation will go on among yourself. And so in the future, I hope that more people are getting interested in this topic and, start the conversation on your own. And, you are welcome to talk to the panelists as well after the session. But now it's your chance, it's your opportunity to ask your questions to the panelists. So we can.
I think what we might do is have 3 questions from the audience, put them all together, and then we'll ask them. And then we'll do the same with the online. We'll take 3 questions, but because we've got online, we need to repeat the questions, I think, by you, so that everyone can hear it online too. Yeah. So Christiana's monitoring online. So we've got 3 people, or more. I don't know if you want to start, or maybe I'll just start with that woman in the back with the red hair.
I think what I think and my question is, we kind of talk about it further along, and reference that we don't want to technical background. Like, where do you start when you get involved? I think it's very exciting. For someone like me that doesn't have any very, like, how can we get involved in AI? It's a very that's a general question. Yeah, it's all really question. Maybe if you could just sum up that, and then we'll
The question right now or after?
Okay, so the question is how, as a general, how do we get started to use it?
How do we get comfortable to start to use this technology? That's the first question.
I think one of the most important things that I identify whenever I hear any conversation about AI and I worry about is that most of the time when we have this conversation, we don't particularly identify what AI is. It tends to get lumped into this general idea of technology, but if we don't define what this is, and not all AIs are created equal, there's a lot of different types. So I guess my question to the panel would be, how would you define AI to everyone here? And what is it? How does it work? How do you imagine it works? And what is it how is it differentiated from all of the other technologies that we see?
Online can hear perfectly as well, so no need to repeat.
A third question?
Hey, hello, Miguel here. My question is about, I guess, something related to what you have asked is about marketing. A lot of companies maybe like greenwashing. Now AI washing may be a thing now. Do you see that is there going to be another kind of like equivalent .com crisis in which as a lot of companies are going to go and do fraud marketing themselves as AI, but in essence, they're using kind of like algorithms that already exist and it's not AI properly? Yeah, that's it.
Who would volunteer to answer the question?
Ruth, you want to hold? Yeah, I can do, if you want me to start. Sorry. Okay, so how to get involved? I'm going to be really bold here and say in the IEEE standards world, we actually take anyone who's interested. We have a lot. We actually work in what we call transdisciplinary teams. We have lawyers, we have accountants, as well as obviously machine learning and engineers, we have psychologists, we have, all working together to solve these problems. To Scott's point, we very much start from that problem statement. So I guess, yes, I would welcome everyone's contribution if you're interested in developing standards. That's how I started. I started learning, not knowing a lot about it, and gosh, you learn from other people. You contribute as you can. My particular background, particularly very process oriented, I helped to structure a lot of what they were doing. But then you learn in these teams from everyone else, and it's actually the ability to be challenged and to work with people with completely different skills from you that actually builds these amazing solutions. So I think everybody has got a role if you're interested in becoming involved. What is AI? Again, I'll take it from the IEEE point of view. IEEE had, and I'm saying IEEE was one of the first to actually write this ethically aligned design discussion paper. They never called it AI, they called it autonomous and intelligent systems, meaning it could be a robot, it could be a decision maker or a recommender, or it could be just an efficiency tool. It could be any of those things. So you're quite right. And even a lot of the standards bodies, that if they try and pin down what is AI, it's very difficult, and some of them are. But we, being IEEE, have always talked about an AIS as an encompassing term. Okay. And in terms of greenwashing and
Is it another
marketing,
.com bubble?
.com. Well, interestingly, and this is the problem, isn't it? But IEEE has actually developed a certification program and a whole ecosystem called Certified, which is to actually certify AI or AIS integrated systems in order to show that these are in fact trustworthy, and they are assessed as trustworthy systems to the marketplace to promote development and also use of these AIS, these autonomous intelligence systems, in a controlled, ethical and trustworthy way, which will show well-being outcomes to the recipients. So that would be my short answer. There are mechanisms in place to try and promote, to overcome this greenwashing and the marketing spin, to be authentic to the marketplace. Yes.
So, Jazz, do you have different definition of AI? And from a historian perspective, is it going to be another .com bubble or something similar?
Very hard to answer. I think I'm very stuck on the first question, because I'm a firm believer that the best teams are interdisciplinary teams. And I want to say that I'm not sure what getting involved means to you, but I will say that a sharp awareness of history is very important. Understanding how technologies are developed and how they've impacted our lives, I think, you know, would make someone a stronger programmer, for instance. So some of my best students are STEM students, and this is an art subject that I teach. And they're super interesting because they're very interested in sort of critical theory, feminist theory of technology, post-colonial theory. And I think it all starts with a really good awareness of history. And I'm very sort of stuck on this question. In terms of the .com bubble, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think there is a lot of hype, and we're all sort of touched on the problem of hype in different ways. But it's very, you know, hard for me at least to predict what could happen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to.
Sorry, we're just running out of time, so we might have to just, I'd really like to hear from you both, but I think we need to go on to that for questions.
Okay, so I guess Scott and Lucas, you need to answer the questions from the online audience, right?
Yeah.
Got two questions.
Yep.
One question for mine is, do you have anything AI will make able to help very specific problem? I'll let the panelists mull over that, if at all. I have another question, if I might put the second one in the batch. I suspect one of the reasons people have such trepidation about AI comes from a very specific use, which is not ubiquitous in all AI, but decision making. So I've had a chat with a few colleagues at my university, and it seems one of the things that really strikes fear into the hearts of many people is that decisions are made without anyone, and I use one here quite deliberately, being accountable or responsible for the decision. So the question, sorry for the long preface, is what kind of steps would we need to make in decision-making AI such that those kinds of anxieties are allayed?
No.
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on the scale one. So most of you will know Stone and Chalk. It's a startup ecosystem here in Melbourne, and they do these ecosystem drinks. And a couple of months ago, I went to one of those, and there was a startup exhibiting an AI-powered robot. It's really cute, like about this size, and it had real-looking eyes with a display. They were blinking, and the robot was meant to listen to a person and remember the stories they told that robot over the month, and then have a conversation with them. And a huge problem in aged care is loneliness. So these robots were specifically designed to help people who couldn't get the care they needed to help them not feel so lonely and help them with mental issues. So that's I guess one answer to that question. Very specific one. I wish I could remember the name of the startup. I can't, but they're still around.
We can find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly the other.
Yeah, I will. I'll ask some questions of the audience. Who's got Facebook? Who used Google Maps to come here tonight? Who's watched Netflix? You're all AI consumers.
Yes.
You're using AI. Who's been electrocuted? Is electricity dangerous? Do we think about it when we turn the lights on? AI is like electricity. So there was the same conversations going around. There's a show on Amazon Prime called 1882. And there's a scene in there where they're talking about, oh my God, all these machines, these electrical machines, you're going to have them in the whole part of your house. And what are we going to do then? Exactly what we're doing now. So I think what's going to happen, and maybe coming back to your question earlier, I don't think you need to learn to code unless you want to be a data scientist and you want to head down that path. I think Jazz's point, it's multidisciplinary. I'm not a data scientist. I don't know how to code. Yuval and Jamie do that really well. I stay away. I know how to translate the business challenges to the data science team to solve problems. It's multidisciplinary, right? So I think as we go forward, and you're seeing it already, 30% of Microsoft's platform, their entire software platform, is written by GitHub Copilot, so their own version. So it's no longer written by a developer. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to flip where the machine learning models, the natural language models, the models that we're using to write the algorithms are going to do the heavy lifting for us. We will move to a point, and I'm risking on moving into Bruce's area of futurism, where it will be a voice interface. I need this task to be done. It's not for us to figure out how to run an electricity plant. It's for us to figure out what to do with the electricity and then the thing that comes from it. And I put AI in the same way. They talk about it as the fourth industrial revolution. Electricity was the last one. AI is the next one. It's going to enable, and to the aged care, it's going to enable every industry. So there was a lot of talk around it'll all be the blue collar jobs that are going. The reality, if you look at it, it's all the white collar jobs that are going. Do you need as many paralegals? No. Do you need one? Yes. Did we have typing pools with 50 women sitting in a room doing secretarial work? Do they exist anymore? No. Is that a good thing? Yep. Not needed. So I actually think in society it's going to change. And I think when you look at this, every industry, there's an opportunity, but be involved, use it, start to, grab the ChatGPT or Gemini and talk to it. Ask it questions, get it to do things for you. I use one, we had a workshop where we sat and asked it to be a management consultant, listened to our conversation, and then we threw questions at it like we had a McKinsey consultant in the room. It's fantastic. It was really. So, yeah, I think to the greenwashing, a lot of it's there, I think, but that's in any industry. So I would say know your processes really well and understand the solution you're trying to solve. If you're looking for a silver bullet, you're probably going to get the greenwashing concept.
Okay, I'm really sorry, but I think we're going to have to wind up a little bit. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about, can I just step over just so people online can see me too? Thank you so much for speaking. Thanks also to Elaine. And I think I can go out of the audience. Thank you. It's been a really thorough and interesting discussion tonight. And I've got on the slide here, just thank you, but also we've got some references that have been provided by some of our speakers, IEEE standards, and we'll send it in our meeting with some of the links that has been provided by Ruth, and also excerpt from Jazz's book that she's written that's being pursued. And I'll just move on. If you want to know more about Conversation at Crossroads, our organisation, you can become a member by registering with our platform through Patreon. We charge a very small fee, but that fee will help us to keep running events like this. I think it's around $2 a month, but it really will help us. And you'll also get to hear more about what we do and talk with others. And then we also got podcasts that are coming up. We've got a mailing list, so please, if you want to add yourself or your friends. And so you can donate to our crowdfunding. We're just about starting to people. We want to raise $20,000 for our organisation so that we can do more work and create our more people. And so we're really excited to do that. You'll see I'll send you some details about that. That'll be on our website soon. Upcoming events. We also have, if you could just keep going, Casey, we've got a Big Ideas event that we're going to do at the Castle Hotel. It'll be on censorship and suppression of information in Australia. So really topical. And it'll be a great opportunity to meet other people. It's on the Thursday, the 16th of May at 7 to 10. So please join us. We'll have registrations open really soon. I can also make that available on our website. So that, and then a bit later in the year, over September to October, we're going to have a 6-week series. And we're going to be talking about greed and lust for power in public life and what of ethics and so nothing short of really interesting and really great discussions to be had there, and Joseph and Larry will be leading that. So if you want to know more about us, there's our website. We've got a Facebook page too, but please go to Facebook as well. Thanks so much. Before you go, I would love it if you could help me with your chair and with your glass. If you could just put them at the back of the room, that would really, really help us out tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Great. Yeah, so it went by really quickly. They actually one that that's actually they've actually